Thank you, everyone, for joining AnswerLab's webinar around transforming your UX practice to transform your business. A few logistical details before we get started. If you have any questions on the presentation today, please feel free to enter them into the chat feature within WebEx. And at the end of the presentation, we'll do our best to address them. Also, after the webcast today, you'll be receiving a number of resources. First, we'll be giving you access to our full point of view document around transforming your UX practice to transform your business, along with a toolkit to support it. And I'll share more about what that toolkit is at the end of the presentation today. So before we get started, Pamela and I would love to introduce ourselves. I'm Amy Buckner Chowdhry, CEO and co-founder of AnswerLab. I founded AnswerLab 10 years ago with a mission to improve the lives of users through exceptional digital experiences. And since that time, we've become a trusted strategic partner to leading brands from FedEx to Facebook. And today I'm really thrilled to share more with you about our ecosystem for UX maturity. And joining me is Pamela Walshe.
Hello, everyone. I'm Pamela Walshe, and I lead our user experience practice to ensure we deliver exceptional insights to our clients. I also have 10 years of experience building user experience practices, first at Charles Schwab during the dot-com boom, and most recently at Wells Fargo. I'm delighted to be sharing many of the best practices we've identified over the years to create more customer-focused organizations.
So first, I wanted to briefly share a little bit about AnswerLab before we get started. We formulated this blueprint for building an effective UX practice based on over 10 years of experience consulting to UX leaders and delivering the insights and advice that shape exceptional digital experiences. We've built very strong relationships with leaders at Fortune 500 companies, and for years we've helped them envision new digital marketing opportunities and products, optimize existing ones, and measure their impact. And it's through these relationships that we interviewed 26 UX leaders to help inform this blueprint for a successful UX practice that we'll be sharing with you today. A couple other things to note about us. We come recommended by Forrester. We're regularly published in UX trade publications for our thought leadership and expertise, and we continuously partner with Google to co-publish best practice content for mobile. So a little bit about our agenda today. Today we'll cover why UX matters to your business, and then we'll share an alternative to traditional models of UX maturity with our ecosystem model of UX performance. As we go through the model, we'll give you a roadmap you need to evolve your UX practice, elevate the value of UX in your organization, and contribute to your business's bottom line. And you'll get examples and tools to help you, 1, assess the health of your UX practice, 2, align UX goals with business objectives, 3, determine the optimal structure of your UX organization, and 4, demonstrate and communicate the value of UX across your company. Okay, so today we're going to talk about building UX maturity in your organization, but sometimes it's nice to take a little step back and reflect on how far we've come in the digital world before we look into the future. And I thought you might get a kick out of seeing where I started, Smart Planet. This was 1999, and SoftBank had decided to democratize education, and our team focused on shifting Ziff Davis University, which was an online learning tool for software and technology, to education for everyone. This website reflects our first launch, and you'll notice the off-putting brain in the upper left-hand corner. And at that time, we had no information architects, no UX designers, no UX researchers. No one even used the phrase user experience. And I watched our VP of Biz Dev, VP of Engineering, VP of Content duke it out over design decisions for the website based on their specific objectives among their team. No one was sitting among the executive team and representing the voice of the customer. And that's really where I found my calling. And now fast forward to 2005, and Pamela was at Wells Fargo.
When I first joined Wells Fargo in 2005, the Internet Services Group was primarily focused on growing their online banking enrollments, and other banking offerings were simply highlighted in a laundry list of products that you see here represented on the home page. So flash forward 10 years later, and the impact of their user-centric practice is clearly evident on the home page now. Note that the laundry list of products is gone, and instead of things like loans, we see planning for college and home lending. Instead of a laundry list of investments, 401ks, and mutual funds, We see retirement with an emphasis on learning to make the right retirement choices and simplifying retirement planning. So this tireless focus on customer centricity has led to Keynote calling Wells Fargo's mortgage site a model for user-centered design. And today we have many more examples to share with you about the relationship between solid UX practices and its direct impact on business.
So more and more data is mounting showing that companies who focus on user experience move to the top of the market. And a satisfying and streamlined digital customer experience can set the stage for huge business success, while a poor experience can sink even companies with great products and passionate employees. And as you can see here, according to Watermark Consulting's 2014 study, customer experience leaders generate returns that are 26 points higher than the S&P 500 index. And customer experience laggards show negative returns even when the markets are strong. In fact, many companies realize that UX is so critical to their business success that they've started acquiring boutique UX firms. Facebook acquired San Francisco-based UX design firm Hot Studio in 2013. PricewaterhouseCoopers acquired the UX research design consultancy Optimal Experience in Australia. Capital One acquired Adaptive Path, and just a few weeks ago, Spring Studio, another UX consultancy, was purchased by another big bank, BBVA. So as you all know, a ton has been written about the importance of customer experience in driving business success. However, UX practices are not as fully developed or integrated into the business structure as in many companies as one might expect. And as a result, user experience practices are not living up to their full strategic potential. Here's an interesting insight from a McKinsey survey. So 850 C-level executives say that their CEOs are more involved in digital efforts than ever before, and that there's sufficient investment to meet digital goals. However, many of those executives say their companies must address key organizational issues before digital can have a truly transformative impact on their business. They feel that their digital programs are hindered by a lack of talent and a poor understanding of the value of digital. So in a perfect world, your UX practice has the right people with the right skill sets in the right roles supporting an organization that's truly focused on customer needs. But in reality, it sounds a little more like this. We can't find or keep the right people for the job. No one asks, what do our customers want or need or think? And we have too many silos to be able to deliver an amazing user experience. And we want to demonstrate the value of good UX to other functions in the C-suite on board, but we're just not sure what to do about it. And you're really not alone. We hear these challenges from our clients every single day. So to help them overcome these challenges, we decided to interview 26 user experience executives at leading software, pharmaceutical, e-commerce, financial services, retail, and social media companies. We didn't want to just find out how things work or how things should work in some idealized world. Instead, we wanted to learn very specific changes clients could make today to deliver more exceptional digital experiences. We wanted to develop a new model for thinking about UX maturity in a rapidly changing digital world. And as a result of this work, we challenge traditional models of the evolution of UX organizations as a linear progression through stages to this endpoint nirvana. These user experience maturity models assume progress is made and held one level at a time, potentially taking decades to reach the endpoint. And is this really the model you want to assess your organization against? The digital world is moving too rapidly to follow such a slow path to maturity. So we propose an optimal model of UX performance that is not sequential, but rather a network of interconnected disciplines. We believe that progress requires thinking of the overall UX practice as an ecosystem with 4 key elements that can be nurtured simultaneously. This is a model that won't take years to fully implement in order to have true bottom-line business impact. And because an ecosystem framework allows for more permutations of success, it invites various players in the UX practice to influence change and collaborate for success overall. One company might require a different balance of elements than another. So let's talk about these 4 key elements that I just mentioned. They are expertise, customer centricity, alignment, and value. And with this model, we can take very concrete steps toward building a UX organization for business success. So today, we'll share how to identify expertise gaps in the UX organization, how to foster customer centricity across the company with specific activities. We'll share how to align the structure of the UX organization for maximum impact, and we'll show you how to demonstrate and communicate the value of UX. And so Pamela will be taking us through this first element here, expertise.
Well, we all know expertise is table stakes, and without a strong team, you'd be hard-pressed to have a long-lasting impact. And I think many of you would likely relate to this quote from an SVP who participated in this research, who said, "Our strategy can't just be to get butts in seats. We need to make sure we get the right talent in the right seat in order for them to be effective in their job, and we need to find people who are also a good cultural fit." So we know this is a challenge that many of you share, but we've identified some core competencies that you need to be looking for that will help move your practice forward. So what do we mean by expertise? Well, here's what we've learned. This element requires assembling a team that has 3 core components: user experience specific skills, demonstrated business acumen and leadership, and evangelism of user experience. So I'll share more about what each of these attributes requires. First, ensure you build a team with specific UX-related skills. We know that people come to UX from a variety of backgrounds, so you'll want to look for individuals from disciplines either focused on understanding human behavior, such as human-computer interaction or HCI, cognitive psychology or anthropology, or with degrees focused on understanding and managing complex information, such as computer science, MBAs, and statistics. In fact, hopefully your team would represent a mix of these different backgrounds. You'd also want to ensure that your multidisciplinary team include design talent with graphic and visual design skills, information architecture, content strategy, and coding skills, as well as user experience research talent with moderation, presentation, and analysis skills. But for this team to be successful, they also need to have business acumen and leadership. This is imperative, and it would be important for you to ask yourself if your team demonstrates these qualities. Do you have a team leader who has the expertise to set the vision for the organization, establish priorities, and set a UX strategy? Does the practice leader know how to establish key measures for success and evaluate performance against those? And do leaders understand business priorities and identify opportunities to integrate user-centric activities at key decision-making points? And finally, it's not only imperative that the team have ongoing business impact. If you truly want to develop your UX practice, ongoing evangelism should be an explicit area of focus for you to ensure that successes are shared with others so that you can create visibility and build buy-in of a customer-centric approach to your business. So successfully evangelizing UX requires that team members of all levels are able to articulate the importance of user experience to other functions across the organization. They need to seek opportunities to communicate success stories and insights across the wider organization. An example is that one of our clients hosts learning lunches to highlight team success stories and includes everyone from developers, designers, researchers, to senior level leaders. Customer stories are central to these gatherings as a way to bring experiences to life beyond the standard metrics one associates with measuring success. And finally, don't miss out on opportunities to engage with the larger professional community by highlighting your experiences at meetups, events, and conferences with organizations such as IXDA, UXPA, and CHI. Garnering public recognition for achievement is another important way to publicly reinforce your efforts and to transform your brand into one known as being customer-focused, as FedEx recently did by being recognized as a runner-up for the most effective in-house team by UX Magazine. Building the right team can be one of the greatest challenges, and to help, we've crafted this expertise evaluation form that you'll all be receiving today. Use it to evaluate your team and identify which skills and areas of expertise you already possess and which may be gaps for you. Determine those that can be filled by either hiring full-time employees with those skills or leveraging contractors or partners that understand your business. Be sure to think both about your immediate needs as well as long-term to anticipate how you may need to scale in the future. As you develop a team with these skills, you've taken a significant step toward creating a customer-centric culture.
So customer centricity, this is element number 2. Without customer centricity, all the experience in the world will not make a difference to the effectiveness of your UX practice. Customer centricity enables talent to thrive, and this element ideally permeates the entire company. It's not simply about exceeding the expectations of customers who buy your products. It's also about exceeding the expectations of internal customers and stakeholders. And here's great food for thought here on the slide from a UX executive at a Fortune 1000 technology company. I'll read it right here. Everybody at the company is expected to engage with customers. We include our customer experience focus in investor decks and when we talk to the board. We tell the world about it. It's at the core, a fundamental part of how we operate. So now let's talk about how you can get this level of customer centricity into your company's DNA. First and foremost, it requires 3 key activities. First, integrating customer needs into key decisions and developing empathy. The second is being consultative, and the third is fostering a very collaborative and cross-functional culture. So let's kind of drill down on each one of those. First, to integrate customer needs into decision-making, and business stakeholders need to basically build customer empathy. Empathy is a true understanding and caring about customer goals, needs, and the context for their decision-making. Those insights are best uncovered with research that's tied to the entire product development cycle. And then empathy comes from observing customers through a variety of channels and methods, such as listening to customer care calls, observing usability tests and interviews, and then using your own product and your competitors' products. Then you can amplify those observed customer points of pain through socializing videos of them throughout the organization. But ultimately, the apex of customer centricity involves every single person at the company at some point in time engaging directly with customers. The next element, being consultative. The UX practice should serve as the company's resource for customer insights and analysis. The team should not only be able to weigh in when asked, but also be proactively promoting the customer perspective across teams and setting priorities for new endeavors. At one Fortune 100 company we spoke with, the UX practice holds weekly consulting office hours offering support on design sessions or UX research planning. And the result is more consistency across customer experiences and even better increased demand for the UX team's input, which ultimately results in better products. And the third element of cultivating customer centricity involves fostering a collaborative and cross-functional culture. Good UX cannot be created in a vacuum. Just as it must start with customer empathy, it also requires collaboration across product management, operations, marketing, development, design, and customer support teams. Involve these teams at key project milestones and look for key opportunities to host activities that will promote a customer focus. One of our clients, Pamela mentioned before, FedEx, they host an annual World Usability Day with over 300 participants across the organization that's resulted in an even stronger cultural focus on the customer. So in this ecosystem point of view that we'll share after this webcast, you'll find a host of additional activities and ideas for how to foster customer centricity in your organization. And they'll help your team start thinking, what are some very specific activities you could engage in that would develop empathy successfully in your company's culture? And as we focus on cultivating this customer centricity, we also need to think about how the organization is aligned to make that happen. And Pamela will share some models for you to consider.
So while customer centricity will promote philosophical alignment of business priorities across stakeholders, to really deliver on those priorities, it's critical that there's also organizational alignment of the UX practice. Organizational alignment should foster collaboration, a focus on the customer, and be driven by executive leadership to ensure a holistic view of the user experience that meets your strategic goals. An example of one structural challenge that one of our clients is facing in retail illustrates the importance of having alignment that matches business goals. Like many of the companies we work with, their structure has grown up to reflect the various platforms. They have an iOS team, a Droid team, desktop, etc. And while the structure originally served them well to quickly create products and services for each of the platforms, it no longer matches the customer demand for a seamless experience. So with each additional technology that's developed, they become further away to being able to create that harmonious experience. So it's critical to remember that the organizational model is always the last thing any company should be talking about. The first thing to talk about is what you're trying to achieve. So optimizing your organization structure for achievement depends on your company's current needs, and in fact, the structure may change as your company evolves. Factors such as resources, budget, and the need for deep subject matter expertise can all impact how UX is organized. And we identified three main ways to structure UX organizations. They include a centralized model, decentralized, and hybrid model. And I'm going to briefly describe the benefits and challenges of each of them. So in a centralized model, the UX team acts as a consulting group to provide services across the organization. UX practitioners are deployed on a project basis, but report into the larger UX organization. And this is a successful structure with most teams due to its versatility and scalability. The primary benefits here are visibility into and accountability for the holistic customer experience because the practitioners are working across business units, and this gives them a unique bird's eye view that others aren't privy to. It also facilitates evangelism. The unified team champions the value of UX because they have strength in numbers. One of the challenges of this model is that there may be a lack of depth in business unit or product knowledge because less time is spent working within those verticals, and it may require more effort to develop relationships outside of a UX organization. In a decentralized model, UX is embedded into the business unit, and many times they report into the head of that business unit. This structure is especially successful when UX is integrated into every aspect of the development process and where there's a need to move quickly, such as in environments where there's a lean development cycle. The benefits here include building strong relationships within each unit because they're spending most of their time within it. They have a depth of subject matter expertise, strong influence on business unit initiatives, and they can move quickly as a cohesive team. Challenges include risk of losing sight of the whole customer experience, as there's a tendency for teams to become siloed. And it can also be difficult to develop core UX best practices that span lines of business. And finally, in a hybrid model, the UX organization has practitioners embedded within business units and also an overarching group that influences strategy and the holistic experience. Many times the practitioners will report into the centralized team but sit amongst the business unit as well. We see this most often in larger organizations who have made a significant financial investment in user experience. The primary benefits here include, the same benefits that we highlighted momentarily about the centralized and decentralized teams, but with an ability to directly impact both day-to-day tactical decisions and also longer-term business strategies. There's extensive knowledge sharing with strategic business unit insight because practitioners are involved at every level and throughout the company. The primary challenge here is that it can be expensive to maintain because it requires more full-time employees to support both business units and a centralized team. So to quickly summarize these models and highlight when they're best used, for a centralized team, it's best to use when there may be limited headcount that needs to be shared and an organization may be new to UX. There's a need to scale and quickly train a UX team, and the environment may be very formalized or process-oriented. A decentralized model works well when there's deep product or business unit knowledge that's imperative, and there could be a lean or nimble development cycle that requires a cohesive team that can move quickly. And a hybrid model works well when there's high-level executive sponsorship and an expansive budget that can support a UX team that's essential both to the day-to-day tactical decisions made within the business units as well as the company's longer-term strategy. The point of view document we'll be sharing after this webcast will go into much greater detail about these structures, but I want to leave you with the insight that no one model stays perfect over time. In fact, many businesses transition from one model to another to address changing business needs, so don't be afraid to reassess your model and take stock of how well it's working for you today and whether there could be benefits to change. If you've had the same model for a while, ask yourself if you see an opportunity to make adjustments that could be more effective given the goals of the business. Because ultimately what's most important is that the team, whatever the model is, provides value to the organization.
And with that, our fourth key element in our ecosystem is value. Value is the demonstration and communication of how UX delivers on business priorities. It's what justifies headcount, budget, and the growth of UX considerations across the organization. That McKinsey survey that I mentioned earlier shows how challenging going digital really can be. The survey identified a large gap between investing in digital and understanding the value of that investment. Today, C-level involvement in digital efforts is growing substantially. Companies recognize that much of their future revenue growth is tied to digital, and they're making digital engagement of customers a top priority for their budgets. But only 7% of the executives say their organization understands the value at stake from digital. And the existence of this gap has the potential to create significant execution risk for many organizations. So McKinsey recommends that digital teams understand better what they can gain from digital initiatives and to match priorities and investments with the areas of highest value. So how do you do that? Well, fundamentally, UX is valued at companies where UX is measured. And examples of data that can be used to measure value are increasing conversion and revenue, reducing development waste, fewer support calls, increased customer satisfaction, and then non-monetary ROI like personal wins and organizational wins. And we've identified a number of best practices to follow when beginning a measurement program. Identify performance metrics in collaboration with key stakeholders to ensure there's buy-in on the measures. And don't rely on vanity metrics because they're easy to collect. You need to triangulate with a variety of measures that are true indicators of business success. And then really think hard about the ultimate objectives of the UX initiative. Are they intended to increase revenue, reduce costs, increase customer loyalty? If there's not a direct causal relationship between UX and those measures, then be sure to identify the caveats in advance. And then run benchmark tests for existing experiences so that when new features are added or channels are integrated, you're able to show success or identify problems. And finally, measure your customer's experience at key touch points and regularly monitor it. And once these measures of value are in place, now you can socialize. Share the results so colleagues understand how they might benefit from a superior user experience. Utilize company gatherings, set up meetings with smaller teams, and leverage office space by posting images or data. Keep a repository of insights that can be easily accessed and shared by the entire company. Think about creating avenues to share the impact of UX like internal newsletters or hosting brown bag lunches or just setting up meetings to check in on metrics with key stakeholders. And then, of course, reevaluate. The best UX organizations look for ways to improve even when they're at the top of their game. Now, I'd like to walk you through just a few examples. Clients who did a good job with their measurement. One was a financial services UX leader who worked closely with product stakeholders to determine what measurements UX could influence on a new product and what metrics were needed in order to quantify success. When they launched the beta version of the product, they monitored these metrics. And based on the results, the team would iterate on the product in this beta stage, do further testing if needed, and launch those changes, and then continue monitoring the metrics. They did multiple rounds until they reached the metrics they agreed would indicate success. And then eventually, they fully launched a successful new product. Example 2, the retail client of ours initially tied his UX team's contributions to really basic metrics that the business already measured, like customer satisfaction and revenue. But over time, he and a colleague found there were other measurements that could better demonstrate how his team's designs impacted experience. The UX team now uses a measurement model that evaluates awareness, engagement, adoption, retention, and advocacy, all stages of a user's relationship with their products. This gave his team incredibly more credibility in the organization. And then last example, an e-commerce organization demonstrated their team's value by collecting all of the user experience issues identified in their past research. Then they calculated the cost of each issue and what it was impacting the business. It received so much attention that the senior executive team committed to reducing the list of UX issues within a year. So think about, how do you measure your customer's digital experience and what business metrics do you track today? We have loads more to share on this particular topic, and we'll be releasing a new point of view about how to measure the user experience for business impact later this summer, and we look forward to sharing that with you. So to wrap things up, today we'll hope you walk away from this presentation feeling optimistic. We hope you've learned some practical ways that you can have impact in your organization without having to follow a 10 to 15-year time frame for building UX maturity. It's so key to take a holistic approach to nurturing the entire network of interconnected disciplines of expertise, customer centricity, alignment, and value. And by working on the health and vitality of each of these 4 elements and thinking of it as an ecosystem, we hope you'll be able to develop more exceptional digital experiences. After this webcast, we'll be sending out a toolkit for you to get started on nurturing your ecosystem. But first, let's step back and answer some questions that may have come in. Okay, I'll take the first question that I've seen directed to me. It's a question about World Usability Day. It says, you had mentioned a World Usability Day event when you were talking about being collaborative. What do you mean by that? For those of you who may not be familiar with it, World Usability Day is typically around mid-November. This year it's November the 12th, and it's actually the 10th anniversary of World Usability Day. It's a day devoted to events that help promote making products and services work better for people. And in New York, there's typically a one-day event with speakers from around the UX community. And then one of our clients, who I alluded to earlier in the presentation, FedEx, they hold a one-day off-site conference that brings together people across the organization who have an impact on UX. Of course, the UX team is there, but then they invite marketing and IT and design and product management and innovation groups. And then they bring in several keynote speakers. In fact, last year we really enjoyed presenting along with Google on our best practices for mobile design. So I'm not suggesting with our recommendation earlier that you need to do anything as elaborate as that, but it gives you an idea and a way to think about drawing others in the organization into your customer centricity way of thinking. So let's see, any other questions? Okay, here's another. What are the best industry standard methods of measuring user experience? I realize there are specifics by industry and company, but if you had to select methods that cut across many industries and cover all the dimensions of what user experience is, what would they be? I think that's a fantastic question. Actually, our team has really thought a lot about this because often we see that companies may be measuring single aspects of what we view to be the entire customer experience. User experience is composed of a number of things. It's not just usability. It's not just look and feel. It's not just utility. It's not just satisfaction. I think some people tend to only measure satisfaction. We think of user experience as being 5 different components. About engagement, how well a digital product can engage with you and keep you coming back. About how well it understands you and knows you, that's personalization. Does it even offer the right tools for you to be able to access it? And what's the usability of it, the most basic one? And then is the look and feel in alignment with the brand, right? And so we kind of think about these 5 factors all rolling in together as being part of one way to score the user experience. And in fact, we developed a tool called UX Impact that helps clients track those 5 key metrics over time and then track that one UX score over time. And then ultimately, we want to measure that impact then on the business. So how does those user experience components impact brand over time and whatever your key calls to actions are for your digital product over time. And then we want to be able to look at all of those factors and make recommendations against each of those factors based on which ones have the greatest impact to your business measures. So we believe really strongly it's not just about satisfaction, it's about a variety of 5 different metrics, and that all of those need to be looked at how they impact the bottom line.
Hi, Amy. This is Pamela. I have a question that I'm happy to field. Someone had asked for tips on how to evaluate candidates to see whether they really have the skills or the business acumen that they say they do. This is a common one that we hear because, of course, UX is such a hot field right now. There are many people wanting to get into the field. And so at AnswerLab, we have a fairly robust process to ensure that we can actually see people's skills applied. And we do that by asking candidates who are serious to sort of mimic the day-to-day work experience. In fact, we highlight some of these activities in the hiring guide that you'll all be receiving. But in a nutshell, it involves completing some timed written exercises, since we all work on tight timelines but still need to produce high-quality work. So we want to see that people can generate high-quality and thoughtful written work. We also have them lead mock research sessions with difficult test subjects to really understand their moderation techniques. So how do they stay on task, even faced with some challenging research subjects? And finally, we ask them to draft and present a presentation to share it with the team to make sure that they can pull together a cohesive story and present with confidence and authority. So there's a lot you can do if you're willing to invest the time in finding the right expertise. Again, it's all about seeing those skills applied in the most real-world environment that you can simulate, and we found that it's definitely worth the investment to do so. And as a follow-up question, we see someone writing in to ask, well, what qualifies you as a UX professional? And with that, I would refer you back to the expertise guide that we have and you'll be receiving at the end of this call, which clearly outlines the core skills that we've identified that are important to make sure that people can be successful in this environment. And it's a combination of having the right educational background and having had some applied experience in some way so that there's a proven track record that they can succeed in this world. I also want to add that there are a lot of people that may be just coming right out of school and interested in getting in the field, and we welcome those people, but we do look for individuals who have demonstrated, a real enthusiasm about self-training in this area, so, networking within the professional events, participating in thought leadership activities, and just really keeping up on what's going on in our industry. So in my mind, those are some very early indicators for people who are just starting out in the field that show that, they have the potential to really come on board and, be part of an interdisciplinary team and bring a lot of enthusiasm and passion to the work.
Great. Thank you, Pamela. And it looks like we had one last question, which I thought was an interesting one that I might pose back for everyone to think about as you leave this webinar, which is, do you think that user experience is still the right name for this whole discipline, or is there a better term now that it's become more holistic need throughout the business? I think that's such an incredible question, and actually one we often hear with clients who have user experience teams, and they have teams that focus on customer experience. And lots of questions arising around what is the intersection between people who are thinking about all of the touch points that may not just be digital versus customers who are thinking about the digital touch points, but more and more touch points are becoming digital, right? And so these teams start to intersect. I don't have the right answer to this, only to know that I'm thrilled that user experience is becoming more widely accepted, adopted, and focused throughout organizations, and really to turn it back to you guys to think and ponder about. So that's it for our questions. And in closing, I'd like to share just a little bit more about what you'll be receiving today. We really appreciate all of your questions and your participation. We'll be sending you this point of view document that's a white paper that's called Transform Your UX Practice to Transform Your Business. And then I mentioned a toolkit, and you'll see here four. There are four tools that will help you for each of the four elements. One is an expertise evaluation form. Another involves 13 activities for fostering customer centricity. A third one is a way to determine the optimal UX organization structure for your company. And then the last is a checklist for demonstrating value. And in conclusion, if you're interested in learning more about our findings or our user experience solutions, please contact us above at info@answerlab.com. And we'd be thrilled to hear from you and to continue the dialogue. Thank you so much.